Hi, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started here. Thanks for joining. Some of you know, on social media, I'm posting, regularly these little sort of brief moments of exploring the nature of experience in different ways. I decided to pull them all together and created a free ebook, which you're welcome to find on my website and download if you'd like to have a copy. And I titled the book, "Everything is the Doorway." It kind of says it all. And this is what I wrote in the introduction. I thought I might read just a few passages from it to get us going, and kind of let each one of them sort of sink in and move in us. So this is the introduction. No matter their size or their shape, their speed or their color, their feel or their sound, every watery wave that arises is made of and ultimately inseparable from the sea that gave it birth. Similarly, every thought, every sensation, every feeling, and every circumstance is inseparable from the infinite sea of life out of which it emerged. I probably don't need to say any more than that right there. Every thought, every sensation, every feeling, every circumstance, inseparable from the infinite sea of life out of which it has emerged. What appears as the unimaginably rich diversity of phenomena encountered in life is, at its basis, one thing, a singular reality. The aim of the short passages in this book is to evoke this recognition. The discovery that every experiential wave that appears, every sight, every sound, every feeling, every thought, every perception, is none other than the unfathomable, miraculous shining forth of reality itself. This is the very first little meditation in it. It's called "Everything is the Shining Forth." Every experience is a universe of ultimately indescribable and unresolvable qualities and characteristics. Experiential phenomena are so fluid, paradoxically here and present, at the same time unfindable and ungraspable, never quite taking clear shape or form, owing to their relentlessly shape-shifting nature. Each momentary flash of life, even those moments we find challenging to navigate, are at the same time a vast, bottomless sea, constantly moving and shifting, like the tides. This discovery reveals that even those experiences we conventionally think of as problematic are actually astonishingly rich, luscious movements of life itself. Every moment, regardless of its conventional label, is nothing less than the mysterious, inexplicable shining forth of reality. To be sure, certain experiences can bring us to our human knees, and yet, from another vantage, those same difficult experiences can be realized to be the most exquisitely beautiful mystery and miracle. The bottomless bottom line is that every experiential phenomenon is so far beyond anything we could ever imagine or conceive of it to be. Most teachings talk about presence as something that can be accessed, a state that we can get ourselves into or out of. However, the presence I am most interested in is the presence that doesn't come or go, the presence of what is, ever changing, yet always here. And just feel that for a moment. Feel the simple presence of what's here in all its diversity and color. And notice the way it's always changing. What's here is always changing, isn't it? It's not holding still. It's flickering, shining, dynamic. But this presence of what's here is always here. There's no getting into it. There's no escaping it. It's here before there's any effort made to notice it. It's here before there's any effort made to rest in it or inquire into it. Not that there's anything wrong with any of those activities, of course. This is here immediately, inexplicably, this presence. It's on, the presence of reality, shining. Ever changing, always present. Always present. So there isn't really anything to do to make that so, is there? The presence of what's here is present, irrespective of anything we might think needs to be done. It's just here. Reality is just here. This explosion of consciousness and energy, we could say. This incredible capacity of perceiving that is intrinsic to all experience. This capacity to know, the light of knowing, shining in and through every single experience. The knowing of experience and the experience, completely inseparable. And here, absolutely spontaneously and effortlessly. Just like presence, the knowing and the presence are inseparable. So we could say that the knowing of this moment is ever present. Never goes away. Where does it go? All that changes is the flavor and the texture of experience, which is constantly, as I said, constantly shifting, constantly changing. But pervading it always, the knowing of the experience, everything appearing with perfect clarity. Our confusion appearing with perfect clarity, our sense of identification, if that's there, appearing with perfect clarity. A moment where we feel free of identification, appearing with perfect clarity. The perfect clarity, the luminosity, the knowing of everything that pervades everything is absolutely constant. It never goes away. And just feel the reality of that. It's just undeniable. Self-evidently the case. A moment where we might describe as having lost contact with that somehow, having forgotten that somehow, having gotten caught up in something that we might think of as a distraction from recognizing that. All of that is just more flavor. All of that is just more of the different qualities that reality can shine forth as. And yet each one of those things I just was describing are luminously known, aren't they? Yeah, I'll read a couple of more passages and then we'll open it up for some conversation. We are particular, at the same time universal, seemingly localized here, yet spread across the heavens. Tiny points of sky made of a vast and fathomless sky. This is a great paradox of that sense of individuality, of being this localized point somehow of reality. Just feel the way in which that perspective feels to me. I feel the sense of that, of like being here, localized as this point, this kind of node, if you will, of reality here. What's so interesting, though, is that if you feel the presence of this, what we could call this localization, this here-ness, it's here, it's local, it's right here. It is, just as I said in that little passage, a point of sky inseparable from the boundless sky. Because you cannot find the edge of this point. It's really a pointless point. It doesn't have that localization that we would describe as here. You can't find the edge of here. You can't find a there. You just keep finding here. Even if you go spatially, you never get to the end of here, do you? It's kind of amazing, isn't it? You never get to the edge of you, that seemingly bounded point of localization. You never arrive at an end to it, a boundary to it, a border. So this is what I mean, that we're like tiny points of sky made of sky. So in a sense, we're just like the wave, are we separate waves with bounded in some way as a wave of existence, as a form of existence, as an individual? From one perspective, certainly. And from this other perspective, the wave is the sea. The point of sky is the entire sky. So there's no distinction. There's no here and there. There's just here. There's no this with some border that then becomes that. There's just this. No end to it. No boundary to it. At one level, reality is precisely what we say it is. Tired is tired. Fear is fear. Happiness, happiness. But at the same time, our experiences are forever transcending any effort we might make to explain, define, or characterize them. And so we find ourselves smack dab in the middle of this beautiful, awe-inspiring paradox. That we know what things are on the one hand, and yet we also don't know what they are. For what they are is inherently uncertain and indeterminate. All that exists is pure, wide open, ungraspable mystery, through and through. It's funny how often paradox, seems to be the rule of the day. um, this paradox of being, I was saying a moment ago, of being this seemingly localized individual, and yet paradoxically no boundary can be found between what we think of as the point of the individual and the whole of reality. So which one are we, in a sense? Localized or spread across the heavens, individual or inseparable from the whole? The same with our seeming knowledge of things. Do I know what this is? Yes, this is a body sitting here. So I have this knowledge, seemingly, of what this form is that I call a body, or what experience is of sadness or happiness. I can describe the flavor, seemingly. I know what it is. I know what it tastes like any flavor of food. And yet, paradoxically, when I delve into what anything is, any seeming object like a body, or any seeming subjective experience like sadness or happiness, I just keep looking and I just keep looking, and I find more and more and more and more details that seemingly comprise those experiential flavors and textures, but I can never quite arrive at the final conclusion of what that flavor is. I mean, what is it? What is, take any flavor. Well, what is that? Like at its basis, let me get to the essence of it. And the essence is absolutely beyond comprehension. It can't be thought. It can't be conceived. The essence of anything, the basis of anything. Here's another one. Our perceptions, the perception you're having right now, disappear of their own accord. The perception vanishes. And we needn't do anything to bring this about. The release of each moment is effortless, spontaneous. The perception you're having right now, just try to keep it in place. Try to keep it here. Try to stop this perception from morphing into the next one, this experience from changing into the next experience. It can't be done. Feel this, the wondrous freedom of this, the impossibility of ever holding on to any perception. So just feel that, feel the self-release of everything, of each instant, of each moment, of each it's like the passing away of each moment. It was amazing, as I was saying that, this bird just flew into my window and crashed into my window. The ending of each moment, just like that. You know, it's astonishing that the release of this moment is so instantaneous. Like now, how long is now? It's like you pinpoint this instant, this actual presence of now. It's not something that was, not something that will be, but this instant. What's its duration? You can't really, it's as if there's nothing there. Like now is so tiny. It's it's just, it never quite comes into form in a sense, because it vanishes instantly. The instant. That's the pointless point of now. And yet it shows up as all of this, the passage of time. Apropos that, I'll read one more here. This flash instant of experiencing, the one I was just describing, this flash instant, it has no narrative attached to it. No story, no drama, no stress, no victimhood, no failure, no victory. Just this mysterious effulgence shining forth, full of the most incomprehensible depth, richness, vitality, lusciousness, meaningfulness. There's no time for real narrative. It's gone too quickly for there to be a story about it, actually. And yet the story can appear and does appear, doesn't it? The narrative appears, the drama. And yet you can feel how this flash instant is entirely transcends all narrative. Right now, there's no story. Where is the story? There's no story. Because whatever story is like trying to take form keeps slipping away, keeps vanishing. Actually, the actual experience. It can't quite hold itself together. It's kind of amazing. So whether we're talking about the luminosity that's shining within everything, or the inconceivable nature of everything, the unfathomable, boundless, indefinable nature of everything, or the presence of everything, or the spontaneous self-release of everything, seeing those things, recognizing what I just said about the nature of experience, doesn't require that experience look any particular way, because each experience has that. Each experience is present by its very nature. So presence, discovering presence doesn't require experience to look a particular way, because presence is appearing as each experience, each circumstance. So we don't need to rearrange our experiences in some way to find presence, or have a certain set of special circumstances, like whatever that might look like, that we imagine is somehow necessary to discover presence, because presence is every circumstance. It's this circumstance and the next. My apologies, I've been having some internet problems, so I may have just froze for a moment. I'm not sure, but let's do the best with it. And that's why I say everything is a doorway. Everything is a doorway into the same infinite reality, because everything is made of this infinite reality. So that makes it easy in a sense, because you don't have to go anywhere to find it, because in a sense it's finding us. It is finding us in the sense of it is appearing as each instant. That's it. This is the appearance of reality. This is the divine. This is the absolute, showing up as each thing that we describe as a thought, a feeling, a sensation, a circumstance, a perception, a memory, an image. All the different ways it can appear, all the different forms, wave-like forms the ocean can take. But and this is why practices that I often encourage, and throughout the book, the second half of this ebook, this free ebook, is a set of what I call more experiential inquiries, not necessarily statements about reality, but invitations to sort of engage with our experience in a particular way. Quite a few of them are invitations to just allow experience to be as it is. And there's a number of different reasons why that's such a powerful, yet at first glance, seemingly simplistic kind of practice of not trying to modulate or modify or correct experience, but it can reveal so much. And one reason to play around with engaging with our experience in that way of not trying to correct it, take our hands off the steering wheel of experience, so to speak, is that when we engage, as we often do in life, and I think in many spiritual practices, quite frankly, trying to correct experience to make it be a certain way that we associate with whatever it is we're aspiring to realize. It's literally like, to use the ocean wave metaphor once again, it's like trying to alter the shape of the wave in order to make it be the whole of the sea, when the wave is the sea. So this moment doesn't have to be transformed or transfigured into something else, because it is none other than the basic state. It is none other than the ground of existence, however it looks. So it doesn't require altering it or changing it. I mean, we can try to alter or change the moment, but it doesn't make it any more or less what it is, which is the one thing. So you don't have to change your thinking or your feeling or your sensing, because each wave of experience is the ocean waving, no matter the shape of the wave. So this is it, just as it is. You are it, just as you are, whatever you might think of as yourself. That's maybe a good stopping point.
Can I have make a comment?
Yeah, hi, Ed.
Hi, John. I can get caught in the static nature of my environment. And the luminosity disappears. There's just this static picture. What do you suggest to see the luminosity again?
Yeah. Well, I think that way you've just formulated that, which is a way I formulated it for the longest time myself, like very similar terms, for me came out of a misunderstanding that luminosity looked a particular way. In other words, and then when it didn't look that way, and this was not necessarily that conscious, then I imagined that I was missing the luminosity. Like, where did it go? Like it's disappeared and something else is there. But one way we could describe reality is that all that's ever occurring is that something is appearing, right? I mean, that's what we've got, is appearance. And the appearing of the moment, however it's appearing, is the luminosity. It only appears because of the luminosity. So a moment that you or I might describe as static, I think was the word you used, or somehow that seems like the luminosity has disappeared and it's somehow less bright or maybe even there's a kind of a opaqueness to it, to the moment, or a sense of lack of clarity or luminosity. That's the luminosity. That's what it's looking like in that moment. That's the shining forth. It looks like, so the luminosity is all that exists. So there's no, we can experience moments that are less to our liking, less enjoyable, and that we may associate with somehow having lost touch with something more basic or fundamental or true. But it's just a different flavor. It's just a different, and that can be recognized, that can be seen. That what we're describing in a given moment as somehow having lost touch with the luminosity or the indescribability, and now suddenly we're identifying or feeling contracted or whatever, separate. Every single one of those moments we can investigate if we find ourselves inclined to, and see that, wow, what I thought was bondage or identification or contraction or is not actually what I'm describing it to be. That doesn't actually capture what it is. What it is uncapturable. So from that perspective, we never are actually losing the indescribable luminosity. It can't be lost because it's what exists. It's all that exists. So the getting back to that, to come back to your question, is there something we can do to get back to that, is to see however many times it seems necessary to see that there's no losing it, basically. That it can't be lost. That we could say is a cutting through of that idea that somehow we could ever be anything but the very shining forth of reality. That's because that's what is, that's what exists.
I guess part of it is, the description of this dynamic waving nature seems to disappear sometimes.
Yes.
Less wavy and more solid.
Yes. Seems to is the operative word. Definitely. That's the magic show. Stuff seems to be what we think it is. It seems to be solid. It seems to be divided. It seems to be in a bunch of pieces that are separate from each other. It seems to be all these different ways. And it's quite a show. It's like you're watching TV and it sure as hell seems like something's going on when you get lost in the movie, right? It's like, wow, there's people and that person seems to be upset, and that those people seem to be, having a wonderful love affair, and these people seem to be terrified, and and on and on and on. It seems, it's a very convincing for the world of form, of apparent form, and the appearance seems very, very convincing to be what we think it is. And from one perspective, it is. Like I said in that one little meme that I read, like, tired is tired. Don't try to tell me it's tired is somehow exhilarated. No, tired is tired. It's not exhilarated. They're different. And in a very real sense, they are distinct. They're distinct flavors. So I would never deny the way in which reality is experienced as distinctive moments that are different. And so the forms appear, and they appear distinct from each other, and the flavors appear distinct. And but the paradox again is that when we investigate what the flavors are constituted of, what the forms are constituted of, we keep arriving at the same place, which is, can't say, actually. So it's very paradoxical. It's like I said, Things are exactly what we say they are, and they're utterly beyond what we say they are simultaneously. Well, that makes no sense. But that's really how it can be experienced, as like it's both somehow. And they don't contradict each other. They live peacefully together. This lives peacefully as being seemingly separate and definable, and ultimately inseparable and indefinable simultaneously. Not two realities, one reality that looks and can be experienced in either way. We're, of course, very used to the defined version of it and believe that for the most part to be that's what reality is. It's what I think it is. I'm a human being living in a world. Well, that's my definition. And yet there's this indefinable, we could say kind of quantum, beyond quantum reality, which is not an abstract thing, but can be felt. And just by feeling the presence of what's here, feel the presence of what's here, and you just keep feeling it, and you're just dropping into indefinability in the instant of feeling it, because the feeling of this moment is entirely beyond characterization. It's just absolutely beyond any possibility of really saying what it is, which is amazing. It's amazing. And every experience is that way, even the ones that we could say kind of suck and we don't like, and we wish were different, and we imagine have nothing to do with freedom and spiritual liberation and well-being. And yet, no, every experience, even the really, really challenging ones, are at their basis this same transcendental, indefinable miraculousness. So we're home at the basis of those experiences as much as we're home at the basis of pleasure and bliss and openness.
The other meme that struck me was about here and the size of here.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we can experience there appears, and it seems to be different than here, but it's only when you approach there from here
Right.
that you can't find the transition from here to there.
Right. Well, even if it's interesting, because it's really a fun thing to play with, because the investigation of something called over there, what is there like as contrasted with here? Where do you encounter there? Where do you investigate there? You investigate it here as an experience. If you want to experience there, you experience there here, because it's here. You can't ever go, like, it's like if you go to the deepest place, sort of what inside yourself, how people always talk about going within, it's like go within, whatever that means. Like that's become meaningless to me, like going within. Go within, inside, let's say, inside, and what do you encounter? Experience. Now go outside. What do you encounter? Experience. You never go anywhere, in a sense. There's no inside or outside. There's just experience. It doesn't really have an inside or an outside.
So this is the difference that between experience and conception.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow that's difficult to communicate unless
Mm-hmm.
you're you could you practice
Mm-hmm.
and got it.
Right.
Because you're always talking, or most of the time here, you're talking from experience point of view.
Right, for sure. I'm
And
emphasizing
then
that
you're
one.
switching to the concepts of the experience, and that has a whole different vocabulary
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
feeling to it.
Yes, agreed. It has a different. It feels like it has a kind of a different set of sort of implications, almost, we could say. It's like, we've talked about this in other calls. I know, where from the perspective of ordinary, if you will, consensus reality of I'm a person having an experience, either a subjective experience or experiencing some, situation or circumstance that I might describe as outside of me. In either case, it's like that thing, that object of experience is happening to me as a subject, and it is from that kind of consensus reality perspective that we imagine certain experiences and circumstances represent potential problems, that things that could hurt or harm us, we are somehow subject to. Um, that's the kind of the human vulnerability, right? And it's, again, it's like, it's a perspective, like life can show up as that perspective and have a kind of validity and reality from within that perspective. I would never deny that. I know that perspective. It's so dominating most of human encounters and experiences, and it's just taken for granted to be like, that is the perspective, and don't tell me there's some other perspective. But I'm suggesting that from this experiential perspective, you don't find a subject having objective experiences, you just find experience. And if you feel that for a moment, to feel the way in which there's no self and other, there's just a flow of experiencing. There's no longer someone looking for something else, or someone potentially threatened by something else. That's gone from that perspective. There's just a flow of seamless experiencing or perceiving, or whatever we want to call it. Now that has a real different feel to it. For, that's my sense of it. It feels at ease. It feels invulnerable. It feels wide open and boundless and absolutely perfect, because there's nothing else outside of it. So that's a really different feel, isn't it, than, oh shit, I'm a human, and these potentially threatening thoughts that are arising, or feelings, or circumstances, or the world that's in such disarray. It's like, what am I going to do about all this, either experience that's troubling to me or world that's troubling to me? And again, it's fine. I mean, we can continue to operate from within that perspective, and do to some degree, we could say, as humans. Um, but it's just for me, it's just this discovering of this other experiential vantage point, as you were saying, that sort of changes things quite a lot. In terms of because there you are in the most challenging situation, and you can deal with it at that level, let's say, and address it at the level of the defined problem, whether it's a problem with your health, or a problem with a relationship, or a problem with the society, and that's fine. And then you can also experience it even as you're doing all of that, let's say, and engaged in attending to your well-being, or the well-being of the world, as you might aspire it to look like and be like. Meanwhile, there's absolutely nothing but complete, transcendental, indescribable energy and consciousness dancing as all of this magic show. That's a very different perspective, and it's and here it is. It's here to be discovered, if we're inclined to check it out. And I mean, for me, I mean, one of the pragmatic implications is it makes life a hell of a lot easier and more joyful and easeful, even when it's rocky and rough going, which it can be as a human. Old age and death, I mean, it can be pretty fucking rocky. Relationships can be challenging, and all of it, right? It seems. And yet at the heart of all of it is completely free of problem, and not as a philosophy, like, oh, everything's okay, as some sort of idea, but as an actual visceral felt sense that the transcendent is not a philosophy. It's a felt sense that this transcends all definitions and descriptions at its basis. And um, and that things are not separate at their basis either. That's not a philosophy that can be discovered in our experience. And again, it sort of has the implicatory flavor, a flavor that's implication that's just distinct from what we're used to as humans. Um, and yeah.
John?
Hey, Michael.
Hey, good morning. I have another, unfortunately, my Dzogchen spiritual friend, I say other, if you're basically sharing Dzogchen, I would say,
Hmm.
not formally, but
Definitely not formally.
that's right. Anyway, he has a special class this morning. It was 3 weeks, and today is the final day. So I want to swing over to that. But
Hmm.
before I do that, I wanted to ask you. So, do you, in your approach, do you actually advocate sitting meditation as such? Do you recommend that? Learning to observe experience and
I really, I don't, as a rule, advocate that. I don't really advocate much of anything. But I mean, I am sharing, of course, what could be called little mini meditations and inquiries as I was reading. I don't, you might have come on the very end of where I was reading from
yeah.
a free ebook that I just created with these little mini kind of statements of kind of pointing out and little guided inquiries. So I'm obviously very much, inviting and people to investigate their experience. Um, but I don't, as a rule, suggest that people sit for sort of extended periods of time. I mean, if someone's inclined to do that, it can bring forth all sorts of understandings and insights and for sure. But I think one of the, and I'm no expert on Buddhism, but I think um, part of the reason that so-called short moments practices are emphasized, like within Dzogchen, rather than extendedly long periods of meditation, is that what can what can end up happening in longer periods of meditation, not always, is a kind of, it can sort of reinforce um, ideas we may be harboring about sustaining something um, over some period of time, whereas a short moment can just reveal the nature of this, and you don't have to keep looking to see the nature of it, right? So, for example, you can
Hmm.
take a short moment to notice that the moment, this moment of experiencing, this moment of perceiving, has no duration. It's absolutely vanishing in its appearance. Well, you don't have to sit for 20 minutes to notice that. You can notice it in 2 seconds. And it's no different. In other words, the reality, and this is the other reason I think for short moments, is that the nature of reality doesn't depend upon our practice. And so doing short moments rather than extended periods can help to cut through this idea that I have to keep meditating in order for this to continue to be a certain way, which is, it's subtle sometimes, that idea somehow that's somehow required. But no, but the transient, impermanent, dynamic nature of this doesn't depend upon our sitting and noticing it to be that way. So the short moment can help kind of reinforce that, because it's like, it's still that way whether we're taking a short moment to notice it or not. And so I'm not advocating one approach over another per se. My own, I've just found, yeah, I mean, I wrote something, speaking of meditation, a while back, that's actually in this little book. And I think the title of it is something like, see if I can find it here. Um, I'll read it because it feels relevant to your question about meditation.
Oh, okay.
The piece is called "Everything is Meditation," and it's just one way of looking at meditation. Certainly not the only way. But here's one way to understand what meditation is. Meditation is this. This moment is meditation, exactly as it is. Reality appearing as it appears, experience unfolding however it unfolds. This is, to me, the most profound and liberating meditation, to simply see that all there is meditation. A moment labeled as confusion is meditation. An experience of great ease, meditation. An instant of utter despair, meditation. A flash of bliss, meditation. Feeling the pain of identification and separation, meditation. Experiencing a sense of liberation from identity, meditation. Feeling caught in some convoluted web of labeling and describing and storytelling, meditation. Seeing through all the labels and stories to the pristine unknowability of it all, meditation. There's really no need to close your eyes, sit in some special posture, and engage in whatever set of strategies we've been taught constitute meditation. We can, of course, take up whatever psycho-spiritual practices we find ourselves inclined to. But we can also see that just this, as it is, however it may be looking or feeling, is itself total meditation. The streaming forth of each instant, the arising and passing away of every momentary experience, all of it pure meditation, the meditation of life.
Oh, that was beautiful. So this book will only be in the form of an ebook. That you're not going to publish it as a.
I don't have a plan to publish it. I'm happy to just just kind of giving it away here as a free ebook. But maybe it's got, because these came from some memes that I created and post on social media. That each one has there's like a photograph and the text is over the photograph, and so and their color photographs would be very expensive to put it out as a book with all the photographs. But
John, I'm sort of low tech. A meme is a statement or
it's kind of a pop word to describe little quotes and little sayings and that people.
All right.
I don't even know exactly what the translation of a meme is, but some people will describe the stuff I'm posting as memes, but they really are like little inquiries and little. Well, what I just read was one of them, so I'll give you a feel for it.
Very quickly, and then I will depart.
Yeah.
But this morning I watched. I don't know if you've heard of Christopher Titmuss.
A Buddhist teacher. Yeah.
Yeah.
Vipassana kind of teacher. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And he was very, in addition to having been inspired by Theravadan teachings, and he was a monk, I believe, with Ajahn Chah. He was very influenced by J. Krishnamurti. And I guess in 1984, he had the opportunity to interview J. Krishnamurti, and it was a podcast. Well, now it's a podcast, and it's on YouTube. So I listened to part of that. And Krishnamurti was unwavering in saying basically what you just read from your ebook, that no effort to alter what is arising is ever really useful or to interfere to try and create something in the mind. Any movements of mind, he said, including, Krishnamurti was very radical, and I didn't listen to the entire. It was like an hour and a half. I only listened to maybe the first half hour. But Christopher was saying, well, what about the initial stepping stone of calming the mind,
right?
So that one can look and Krishnamurti just said that no effort. You just have to be aware without any choice, without any manipulation.
Hmm.
And
Sorry, Michael, I've lost you there. I don't know. I can't hear you right now, which I hope the problem's not on my end. But
care of itself. So,
Michael, sorry, I lost you there for a second.
oh, I was just
Cell
saying
signal.
that what Krishnamurti seems to be calling for, or what he did share,
Hmm.
i- is very much along the lines of Dzogchen,
Hmm.
the ability somehow come to the ability of letting everything be
Yeah. Hmm.
without the interference of effortful
Yeah.
uh, uh, striving.
Yeah, and Michael, as you're talking, here's and see if this will be a helpful way to kind of highlight this distinct way that I'm approaching it from the way it's often approached. So imagine we're engaging in some practice, whatever it might be, meditation, prayer, yoga. So in a sense, we're doing that in order to make something happen, typically, even if it's subtly so, like to have to so that some insight can arise or something experientially, a state can arise that we can come in contact with, that we associate with being more awake, being more conscious, experiencing the openness, the oneness of everything, whatever it might be. We're trying to have something else appear, basically, that we would then describe as Buddha nature or God or whatever our tradition is, right? So,
Right.
but here's a funny thing: is like from the perspective that I'm talking about, everything that's appearing is God. That's why I say everything is a meditation. This is God. It's like the engine is turned on, the film projector is, as I'll sometimes say, it's like the divine, the absolute reality is projecting all of this stuff somehow magically, mysteriously, inexplicably. This is its display. And so here it is. This is the display of the divine. This is the activity of the basic state of the ground of being. So
Uh,
from that perspective, there isn't really anything to do other than enjoy the display, enjoy, appreciate this magnificent display of reality in all the different ways it shows up, rather than what we tend to do again is sort of associate it with particular versions of the display that we either have tasted before and want to taste again, or have read about or imagined in some kind of ideal way is what we're aspiring to realize. It's like, and meanwhile, it's sort of like, we want the show to look a certain way. We want the movie to look a certain way. Again, we've either been trained that it should look a certain way, or we would like it to look a certain way. And meanwhile, the movie is on and playing, the movie of life, the show of life, the display of life. This is it. And it's on, and it's just unbelievable. I mean, the energy of it, the vitality of it, the intelligence of it, it's shocking. And it's here at every turn. Every single aspect of it is just drenched with this unbelievable, unthinkable vitality and aliveness and consciousness, isn't it? I mean, it's inarguable. It's just absolutely inarguable. And it's here it is on full display. That's what I mean by everything is meditation, is the full display of every single instant. So meditating doesn't make that more so. Meditation then just becomes part of the display. So it can be beautiful and we can enjoy it as a beautiful experience and whatever might occur with that. But the moment the meditation stops, the show goes on, the display goes on. It didn't go anywhere. It's like you walk into your life off the cushion and into your life, so to speak, and you're just walking from one part of the display into the next part of the display. Does that make sense?
it makes sense, and your 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 lucidity is really inspiring. I'm right now. I- am. There's a. I, am right now. I am. I, am. There's a. I. am. Right now. I am. I. am. I. am. There's a. I. am. 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 I. there's I guess you could say a philosophical or, or there's a consideration going on in my mind, and, it's actually been going on for a long time. Sort of maybe came to a head. Hal Blacker is a mutual friend. Some people here may not know him. He sent me an article by John Markonsky or something like Mokransky.
Mm-hmm.
He's a Western Buddhist teacher,
Mm-hmm.
and highlighting or pointing out the differences between the approach of Longchenpa versus Tsongkhapa, and and I mean I think most people who are uh, involved in say non-dual spirituality or Buddhism or Advaita would agree that the the culprit, the problem, if you want to label it as such,
Mm-hmm.
is the mind reifying
Mm-hmm.
reality, perceiving reality in a way that is not in accordance with the way it actually exists,
Mm-hmm.
the conceptual overlay.
Mm-hmm.
So, Tsongkhapa said it is not sufficient to merely recognize the luminosity or radiance of mind, the actual reification mechanism or bundle of whatever that is, that has to be undermined by penetrative insight. So this is something that I'm really wondering about because Tsongkhapa and the followers of that approach, mainly within the Gelugpa tradition, say that it's only the seeing emptiness directly that truly frees the mind. It's possible to get into these very nice, quiet places of radiance
Mm-hmm.
and so forth, but that is not actually going to cut the root of
Mm-hmm.
the process of reification. So right now, that's what I'm
Well, I
grappling
think
with.
one of the things about reifying, which is, it's a word if people aren't familiar with it, that sort of the way in which consciousness, through its defining, conceptualizing mechanisms, um, imagines that things are things that have a kind of independent existence, right? So um, one of the things that does is it creates all of this seeming distinction between this and that, and so the world seems made up of these separate pieces based on the way we reify things and concretize things, right? So
Yeah,
there's no question that, and I emphasize this a lot in my writing and my teaching, that investigate experience, explore experience. Um, don't imagine that because we have names and concepts for things that we've actually pulled it off, that we've actually really defined in a definitive way what things are, because we can explore every moment and feel the presence of the moment, and I think fairly quickly discover the way in which it doesn't collapse into the descriptions and definitions. And that is one of the most powerful doorways into discovering the essential sameness and equalness of everything, because everything is at its basis um, empty of any possibility of being designated and described and characterized. So everything is transcendentally free of all of its designations and descriptions. And so then that can cut through this idea that we tend to carry around, that sort of privileges one state over another, one thing over another, one circumstance over another, which leads us to then go looking for the ones that we associate with whatever we're looking for: happiness, well-being, God, liberation. And then when we're encountering other experiences we've defined and described as somehow being absent of that, then we do such things as try to get rid of them, try to avoid them. But this kind of investigating the nature of experience can reveal that no, everything is in fact the shining forth of this transcendental reality, period.
Yeah.
So I would agree that that's definitely one of the most powerful doorways to recognizing the singular nature of this, is to see that everything is at its basis.
Yeah,
It can't be pinned down.
yeah,
Yeah.
and the Madhyamaka system of that Tsongkhapa follows, it doesn't really discuss. uh, It doesn't posit a positive nature in the way that, say, Dzogchen and Mahamudra do, an underlying Buddha nature.
Mm-hmm.
This is very interesting to me, very fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Emptiness is understood as merely the absence of of the label, of the mind's uh, 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 false labeling of
Mm-hmm.
something as a thing, as a truly, ultimately existing independent thing, when it's actually, that is not the way it exists. So, say, going back to the classic metaphor of the snake and the rope,
Mm-hmm.
the snake appears to be, the rope appears to be a snake,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not that. It's never been that. It never could be that, but it appears very vividly
Right.
as that. So, and then coming to see that it's only a rope, then
Mm-hmm.
the snakeness is no longer the way that it's perceived. So,
And I think, and I agree, and I would just say this maybe also as a suggestion. I've known you for a long time too, which is that you have this sort of wonderful kind of curiosity about the traditions, and sort of trying to reconcile some of the seeming contradictions across traditions, and but there's a way, for me at least, that um, one can kind of cut through a lot of that in by simply exploring in a very natural way. um, I wrote something not that long ago. I don't think it made it in the last book, but it was something about, in the end, this has nothing to do with teachers or teachings or gurus or anything. It has to do with the exploration of your experience, period. And let that really be the sought guru. Let that be the ultimate teacher. Let your own experience reveal its nature to it by simply feeling into its nature, feel the presence of it. It's very simple. It's sort of outside of any philosophical tradition or metaphysical tradition or religious spiritual tradition. It's just the naked encounter with this instant, and feel its presence, and discover the ways in which it just very naturally transcends our conceptions of it. And from my standpoint, that resolves so many of our quandaries and questions, and reveals this just astonishing nature of everything that's here. Dare I say, the divine nature of it. And but it does so in a way that's just kind of, I mean, I can look at what I just described and then look at traditions, what different traditions may say about this, that, or the other thing. I was doing an interview the other day, and somehow, I don't know, it spontaneously came up where I was talking about some stuff in the Bible, which I rarely do.
right,
But it was something about, you know, Jesus said something like, you are the light of the world. It's like, well, what was he talking about? And I said, well, from my vantage, it's like exactly what I'm describing, this inconceivable radiance that is shining forth as everything, including what we think of as ourselves. That is why we are the light of the world. There is only the light of the world. So I was speaking like that. So that comes not from my sort of study of the tradition, like the Christian tradition or any other tradition, but it comes more from exploring my own experience, and then looking, if I'm interested, at what other teachers or teachings may say, to see, well, how do I make sense of that, if at all? I mean, I don't really need to, but sometimes it's interesting to see how what somebody else may have said seems to sort of track what my own experience is suggesting is the case. But for me, that's what's really most empowering and most ultimately effective, is
yeah,
to,
John. For me,
yeah.
it's not it's not about philosophical
I know it's
comparison.
not. I know it's not, Michael. I didn't mean to suggest that it was some kind of philosophical, whatever, engagement that you're. But just a reminder, to that where all the juice really is in actually the palpable, actual, felt, visceral, felt sense of this
Uh,
instant. I mean, that's where it all is. That's the, you know, that's what it's all
no,
about. That's
yeah,
that's what it's all about.
for me, what it's all about is really trying to discern what what is the aim of all of this. What does the mind need to see, or what perceptual shift, insight, uh, needs to occur in order for the mind to become free. So,
Hmm.
and that's framed in different ways.
For
These
sure.
different, yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I don't myself get terribly. I mean, I'm not talking very often in those terms myself about any particular goal other than to discover what this is more fundamentally and in one's own experience. And it feels to me like that is a beneficial, liberating thing to discover for the human. And so there's a natural inclination on my part to both explore it personally and also then share the fruit of those explorations with other people because it has been beneficial to me.
yeah,
And
yeah. No,
so it's really,
that
it's kind of that. Um,
yeah. No,
but I
I
think
think
that,
that
yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say no. That teachers tend to share, like the doorway or the language, the sort of
Hmm.
it's the avenue
Hmm.
that was helpful
Right.
in the case of the particular person.
Yeah.
If a person uh, uh, found some particular
Hmm.
meditation
Right.
helpful, then very likely something along that line will be shared or
Right.
advocated.
Yeah. And I don't even know if I trace my own sharing and where it's come from. And it obviously is arisen out of many different, my a long and winding road of my own journey, like all of ours, and encounters with many different teachers and teachings along the way. And then this incessant, obsessive sort of curiosity on my part to kind of
Right.
get to the bottom of it all, you know, I think was probably
That's
ultimately the ultimate, continues to be, I should say, the ultimate teacher in a sense and so what I've arrived at seems like I don't know exactly where it fits, if at all, into any other traditions, but I don't much worry about that myself, and I'm happy to sort of be sort of just kind of winging it in my own particular way, and hopefully
right.
some people find it of benefit. And I know that when I'm talking about it with all of you, say on these calls, I feel as if it's one of the gifts of talking about it and teaching it, sharing it with other people, is that it's sort of like, be a bit analogous. I'm also a singer, as you know, and it's like I'm singing, and hopefully it's something that is others are finding nourishing
Yeah.
in ways,
Totally.
and then I find same with singing actually, that when I'm singing, I'm also being nourished by what I'm hearing too. And so when I talk about the nature of reality, I'm also being astonished by it as I talk about it, which is um, yeah. I mean, you know, that asks those the way in which reality is so astonishing and nourishing and magnificent. It just feels absolutely inexhaustible to me. Like that well just never runs dry, because
Mm-hmm.
it's just has no bottom to it. It's depth, and it's I don't know, it's quite something, is all I can say. And but anyway, thank you for being on the call. We just have a few minutes left, so I want to see if anyone else had any questions before we bring it to a close.
Very good, John. Thank you. I'll
Thanks,
be with you
Michael.
next week. I
All right.
appreciate it
Take
so
good
much.
care. Always good
You
to hear
too.
from you
Bye.
about them. I'm happy to receive your emails. So thank you all again. Have a wonderful rest of your Sunday. Take good care. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much, John.